Hello, everyone, and welcome to this presentation today. We're going to be talking about the undergraduate programs that we offer at the School of Language, Literature, Music and Visual Culture here at the University of Aberdeen. My name is Dr. Will Barras. I'm a lecturer in this school in linguistics. I also have various other jobs. One of my titles is the student recruitment lead. So I'm always keen to talk to prospective students and to help them to find out more about studying with us. So I'm going to be telling you a little bit about the university and the city and what it's like to come and study at the University of Aberdeen. We also have two student guests with us today, current students, who will say a little bit about themselves and their experiences. And you'll have opportunities to ask them questions later on in this session. So first of all, we have Laura. I don't know if you just want to say hi.
Hi, hello. I'm Laura. I'm from Florida, and I'm a first year language and linguistics student. And I'm happy to answer any questions about the university, what life on campus is like, and also within the city as well. And I hope you all enjoy the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Laura. And then secondly, we have Kailani, who's here as well.
Hiya, I'm Kailani. I'm also in my final year of a linguistics degree combined with sociology at the university. I'm originally from California in the States, and this is my 5th year living in Aberdeen. I'm also happy to answer any questions about the courses or about Aberdeen itself.
Great, thanks both. Okay, so first of all, I mean, look, we've got some slides that I'm going to take you through. I just thought it would be quite nice to show you a typical view of our campus here in Old Aberdeen. Interestingly, this building you can see here is called New Kings, although it's well over 100 years old. There are other bits of the university that are even older than that. And you, as a student, are quite likely to find yourself, as part of your studies, having lectures, tutorials, and other classes in buildings that look as full of kind of history and heritage as you can see in this photo. But as you'll see as we go through, the campus also has some very contemporary, up-to-date facilities as well. The university library, for instance, is a very recent building with some, everything you would need as a sort of modern set of facilities to help you study. So we've got a proud history and heritage, but also with sort of a forward-looking contemporary university as well. So obviously we can talk about the wider university, but this presentation is particularly about subjects that are in the School of Language, Literature, Music and Visual Culture. So that's quite a long list of subjects and areas in the name of our school, and that reflects actually the breadth of academic areas that we have in this part of the university. You can see a list of sort of individual subject areas there: English creative writing, music education, and so on. That's not just a reflection of there being, a long list of subjects. It also says something about the organization that we have, because we're not just a multidisciplinary school in this university. There's also a lot of crossover and interdisciplinary links between these areas. So for instance, if you're a student who's coming to do English literature, you might well find that aspects of linguistics that I teach intersect with what you're interested in. Or if you're a student who's going to be taking some modern languages as part of your degree, you might be doing something in Spanish. part of the studies in the Spanish part of your degree are likely to involve looking at literary texts that were written in Spanish. So, of course, those aspects of literary theory cross over with and are shared with areas like English literature and so on. So we're both multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary, and this is part of the structure of a Scottish MA degree. Because we have 4 years for our MA degree, you are able to experience quite a breadth of education, particularly in year 1 and year 2. You might be intending to graduate with a degree in a particular subject. That's what you've applied here to do. But particularly in your first and second year, if you're interested in something new, something to complement your main degree subject, you're able to fit those things into your timetable. So, for example, you might be somebody who's come here to do film and visual culture, but you might have enjoyed a modern language at school and want to build in a little bit of French, some French courses into the range of courses that go to make up your degree, and you're able to do that. Okay, so we'll talk more about the sort of academic aspects of studying and doing an undergraduate degree here. But a big part of the decision-making process of going to university is thinking about where you would like to live and study for essentially the next 4 years if you're enrolling on a 4-year degree program. So what do we know about Aberdeen? It's in the northeast of Scotland. We can see on the little map there. Aberdeen is the 3rd largest city in Scotland. So it's smaller than Glasgow and Edinburgh, but it's still, a sizable city. Although we're quite far north, transport links are very straightforward. We've got an international airport. Travel time to short-haul flights in the UK or within Europe is very, very manageable. There's also a mainline railway station, so if you want to explore other parts of Scotland, it's very easy to hop on a train and do that. City population there from a recent census is round about 228,000, so we're not talking about a huge city. There are some real benefits to this. We're going to see that Aberdeen has many of the benefits that you might be looking for if you want to move to a city as part of your university experience, but it's also small enough that it's very kind of walkable. The bus systems are very straightforward, easy and frequent to use as well. So it's got the benefits of city life, but also it's quite a kind of manageable size as well. In terms of things like the weather, we've got some sort of average temperatures there. You might think it's quite far north, expecting it to be some kind of Arctic landscape. Not at all. It's actually quite sort of temperate, really. One of the things that you might notice, depending on where you've previously lived, is because we're quite far north, there's quite a range in the daylight hours between winter and summer. So while in the middle of winter, the days are quite short, in summer, it's still kind of broad daylight at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And that's kind of quite interesting because that's different from where some people had lived previously. Again, we've got a little kind of tourist information slide here. There's lots of opportunities for restaurants, cafes, nightlife, that sort of thing. If you want cultural activities, we've got museums, we've got a really nice art gallery. If you're somebody who likes to get out of the city and sort of explore nature and do outdoor activities, it's very easy to get out to the Cairngorms National Park. There's lots of historical sites around. While there might be 260 castles in the northeast of Scotland, a lot of those are sort of privately owned, but there are quite a few that are open to visit, so you can have a day out and explore some history in the local area as well. Okay, sort of closer to the university itself, there is a really wide range of extracurricular activities that form part of many students' experience of being here in Aberdeen. One of the kind of really noticeable things is just across the road from where I am now, we have the Aberdeen Sports Village, which has got an Olympic-sized swimming pool and a diving pool, gyms, track and field events, an indoor football pitch, lots and lots of sporting facilities. As a student, you get really heavily subsidized access to the sports village. So that's something that many students take advantage of. Within the university, we've got a really wide range of student societies, which obviously is great for socializing. Some of those are connected with the academic subjects that people are taking. So there are things like an English Literature Society, and there are French societies and so on. Others are just of particular interest. So it might be kind of sporting things or other pastimes that students like to get together and do it in a society. If you're somebody who's interested in music, you might be studying music or just an enthusiastic player yourself. There are lots of things like music ensembles that you can get involved with as well. On the campus, we've got a student union building. There's lots of places to meet people, places to get something to eat. So we've got, really quite a nice, busy campus here. If we think a little bit about the experience of studying here at Aberdeen, you might want to find out more about, well, what will it be actually like? There's a stereotype that if you go to university, you sit in a lecture and kind of like take notes. So we do have lecture-based classes, particularly actually in the first and second year. As you get further through your degree, you tend to be in smaller groups doing a lot more kind of detailed interactive work rather than having something presented to you. But right from the first year, you will have lectures, you'll have tutorials, which are much smaller discussion groups where you get to ask questions, discuss topics with your tutor and with other students. So that's actually quite an important aspect of the way that we deliver our teaching here. Some courses will have particular types of classes. If you're doing a modern language, you will expect to have some sort of conversation classes, some other language focused classes as part of your degree. Likewise, if you're doing something like music, there are sort of practical classes as well as theory classes involved in degree programs like that. As you get further on, and this is quite interesting that we've got 2 final year students joining us this afternoon. One really kind of key part of a lot of students' experience of studying for their degree is working on a project or a dissertation, which is quite a kind of independent piece of research that students have built up to through the rest of the degree. And when you're doing that sort of work, you have a supervisor. So this is somebody that you have individual meetings with, and that supervisor is going to help to guide you, read what you're working on, make suggestions, and so on. So you can expect quite a wide range of different types of teaching. We try to make things appropriate for the aims of the different courses that you'll be taking. Another question that comes up quite often when we're speaking to prospective students is, well, what does that actually mean in terms of the number of contact hours you might have? So here's an indicative example. If you were a new first year student, so just starting your degree program, you might expect to be taking something like 4 15-credit courses in the first term. In any given term of your degree, you're normally doing 60 credits, and particularly in first year, these tend to be broken down into sort of 15-credit units for each course. So of those 4 courses, if you think about one of them, you might expect to have perhaps 2 one-hour lectures and then a further hour in a much smaller group, a sort of interactive tutorial. So that would be, roughly 3 hours per week, for each of the 4 courses. So that'll be 12 hours per week. But that's not the limit of what we would be hoping you would be doing. Okay, so although you might have 12 contact hours in a week in the sorts of courses that we're offering here in LLMVC, you absolutely should be getting into good habits of independent study as well. So there will be things to read. If you're going to have a tutorial, usually you'll be given some work to prepare and some questions to think about, perhaps some things to try out so that you can arrive at your tutorial with plenty to discuss and work on. At various points through the term, you might have assessments to be working on. Sometimes you have to do group work. So sometimes the out of class work that you're doing involves getting together with other students and doing something like preparing a presentation that you're going to give together, that kind of thing. In terms of how we help you to do that, so right at the beginning, I was talking about some of the historic buildings and the beautiful campus and so on. And some of your lectures and tutorials might be in those kinds of buildings. But here we've got a view of the university library, which is a very kind of, sort of modern building. Yes, of course, it has books and you're able to find relevant books for your course and so on. It also has computer facilities, but really importantly, it's got lots of space for study, both individual study. So if you want a good, quiet place to sit and work through material for your course, the library is a good choice. But it also has dedicated group study spaces as well, because sometimes it's good to get together with friends that are in your course and work through things together. Sometimes that can actually be an essential part of doing the course, like I said, if you're working on a group project. So we have plenty of facilities in places like the library. There's also a cafe and there's sort of exhibitions and things. So there's plenty going on there. More widely across the university campus, we've got other study spaces available, computer rooms and so on, various kind of catering outlets and cafes. And so there's plenty of space for you to find space to work and to study. Another aspect of studying a degree here is that as well as your classes, your lectures, your tutorials and so on, we also have a virtual learning site for each course that you take. On that, so we call that My Aberdeen. So on each My Aberdeen site, you're going to find lecture recordings. So it's super important to actually go to the class and experience the way that your lecturers are presenting material to you. But you also have the benefit of being able to go back later and literally watch parts of that again or check that you've understood key ideas. So lecture recordings are provided along with lecture notes, copies of PowerPoint presentations, that kind of thing. You will also find reading lists, things that you're required to read or suggested reading, details of assessment, and also we have sort of interactive things like discussion boards and so on. So we've got quite a blend between all of the face-to-face teaching and learning that you do on campus, but also the opportunity to continue that through our My Aberdeen sites as well. A really important question that people have is, well, you're coming here to study and to get a degree. What kind of assessment will you need to do to do that? Obviously, there are some quite traditional forms of assessment. So many of your courses will be having things like essays and written work that's quite traditional in that sense. Part of our job as lecturers is to help you to develop the skills that are required to do that. So we're not just going to say, go off and write an essay. We're going to walk you through the process of planning, doing research, academic writing as a skill that you can practice and develop. So it's not solely about being able to write an essay, it's about being able to do all of the the work and the types of skills that are required to lead up to that. But there are less traditional forms of assessment as well. So some courses might have things like presentations, because we recognize that being able to communicate clearly, to use technology like sort of a PowerPoint slideshow or something could be relevant, not just for your degree, but for what you go on to do after university. We also have some really up-to-date forms of assessment. So I was recently reviewing a colleague's course where the students were making podcast episodes. So they didn't have to do a presentation in front of a class. Instead, this was something that they were doing in groups, preparing a podcast which covered a particular aspect of a topic. Sometimes we have things that are based on the My Aberdeen sites. So you might be asked to make some contributions to a discussion board discussion. You might be asked to do something like a reflective journal during a course where you are thinking about what you have learnt each week, whether you still have any questions, because that kind of self-reflection forms part of the assessment for many of our courses. Of course, there's going to be variation course to course. Again, if you're doing something like film and visual culture, some of the courses there actually have practical film making skills as part of the assessment, likewise for things like music and so on. So there's a wide range of assessment. The guiding principle always is that this is to allow you to develop skills and then show that you've acquired those skills. If you get your offer of a place and you accept it and you're going to come to start your degree, we don't just drop you straight into a teaching term and expect you to kind of just know what to do. We have a welcome week before the term, the teaching starts each academic year. And that's a really important time, both in terms of helping you to get started with your academic work, but also for all of the social factors that are involved in beginning as a student, meeting new people, finding out about the city and so on. So during that welcome week, you'll have plenty of opportunities to meet staff that you're going to become very familiar with because they're going to be teaching you. There might also be our administrative colleagues in the school, the kind of people that you quite often have to go to the school office and get them to help you to do things. You will also have a personal tutor. So a personal tutor is an academic member of staff, but not necessarily one of your lecturers. And this person stays with you through the years of your degree, and it's somebody that is a point of contact. You can discuss sort of pastoral issues in terms of how you're settling in and how you're getting on as a student. You can also discuss your sort of ambitions beyond university. You know, what are you hoping to go on to do, and are there things that you can do while you're still a student that can help you achieve those career ambitions. Also during Welcome Week, a lot of the important things to do are, settling into your accommodation, meeting people, exploring the city, meeting your fellow students. There is every year there is a student societies fair where the different student societies I was talking about, are actively looking for new members. So that's a really great opportunity to find out, what's on offer. When you do get started, so I've mentioned the My Aberdeen site, whichever degree you're taking, whether it's a modern language or linguistics or music or English literature, there is a common course that everybody takes, which is an online sort of self-led course called Getting Started at the University of Aberdeen. And this is intended to just make sure that if you have questions and you're not quite sure where you go or who you ask about particular things, this Getting Started at the University of Aberdeen course gives you that kind of information. It's also the case I mentioned the flexibility of our degree programs and how you have the space on your timetable, particularly as a first year student, to take some optional courses that you select. We don't always get it right first time. So you might have chosen a course that you think sounds interesting. You want to do it alongside the main courses for your degree. And then a week or two into the term, you just think, this isn't quite the thing for me. We recognize that. So that flexibility is built into our system as well. Within the first 2 full weeks and into the third week, you're able to switch particular courses. So if you decided to take, I don't know, like an English literature course as an outside subject, and then you decide actually, no, you're more interested in something else, there is a little bit of flexibility built in there. So again, what we're really trying to do is to support students to get the most out of their degree program. And again, that kind of thing is something where talking to your personal tutor is a good step, because we come across similar kinds of questions each year, and we can normally help you find the best way through for you. Talking about student support, as well as things like your personal tutor and the members of staff that you'll meet on your course, we also have wider support teams across the university. So the Careers Service and Employability, the Language Centre can help both with sort of modern languages, if you want to continue to work on a modern language, but also with things like academic writing, academic English as well. The Student Learning Service likewise can guide you with things like study skills, particular aspects of working as a student, which can help you to make the most of the academic courses you're taking. We have an international centre, which can give quite tailored support to students from a range of international backgrounds, and lots more. During the Welcome Week, all of these support teams are very visible and very approachable, but they continue to be available throughout the year as well. So we're always happy to help students. I won't click through these, but basically the university website, which you can look at before you come to Aberdeen, has lots of information on there about the different types of student support that we offer. And we also have some social media channels. So I've got a great colleague in my school who's really good at publicising some of the student achievements and some of the interesting bits of research that go on in the school of LLMVC. So if you're interested in looking, on Facebook or these other social media platforms, please feel free to do that. So that was my set of slides. I've tried to say a little bit about the academic process of studying for a degree and the ways that we as a university try to support students. But at this point, I'm very happy for us to consider any questions. So I know we've got Amy, who's been helping us with this presentation today. I don't know if we've got any questions that have come in on the Q&A.
Thanks, Will. I think you've done a sterling job covering all the information for students, because there's no questions. There's nothing that's come up to the top of the pile just now. But obviously we'll be around and send the deck and the recording over the next couple of days. So yes, but you've covered everything, Will. So well
okay,
done.
thanks. And absolutely, it's sometimes you might have a question and it doesn't immediately come to you. But for instance, my email address is on the slide that's on the screen now. We also have our school email address, so llmvc.enquiries abdn.ac.uk, and that school email address is really well monitored, because any inquiry will get directed to the appropriate person. So if you have a question about a particular degree or a question about some aspect of beginning your studies, we will certainly be very responsive, kind of help you to find out what you need to know. Well, so we're about to, just before we finish, I just wondered if either Laura or Kailani would like to say a little bit more about their experiences of being a student, because I know both of you through the courses that you're taking, and I know that you're coming to the end of your undergraduate degree. So perhaps kind of looking back, what would you say about your experiences of studying here?
Would you like to go first, Kailani?
Sure, thanks, Laura. I'd say that I've appreciated the opportunity to explore multiple subjects, as I'm in a joint honors degree. So I'm getting to do both a linguistics program and a sociology program, and kind of see the overlap in between that. And I feel like that's quite come through for my dissertation as kind of my main final project and final year. It's quite sociolinguistic focused, so it's a nice blend between my disciplines. And I was able to try out a few other courses like Gaelic and anthropology in my first 2 years as well, to kind of get a more interdisciplinary perspective on the subjects I was interested in. And I feel like I've gotten a lot of support from lecturers and from my personal tutor when I have had issues come up here and there over the years. They've been very responsive and able to help me find kind of the best path forward or around any obstacles that show up, to make sure I'm getting the most out of the degree.
That's really great to hear. That's good, and that flexibility in terms of the breadth of study there, really is something that is a strong point of what we do here at Aberdeen. So that's great to hear. Laura, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, I mean, I would also echo what Kailani said, is the breadth of the interdisciplinary courses that you can take is really quite nice. I went into anthropology as well, and Gaelic, and also I did some psychology courses in my first and second year, which I really enjoyed. And even though they're in separate schools, there is some like overlap concept-wise with those courses as well, which really helped build, I believe, my degree up through the years. And as a single honors linguistics student, I can only ever give praise to the linguistics department. I think the breadth of courses that were offered to me were across multiple different fields of linguistic, to really get like a wide idea of all the different areas that you can go into. So I will always vouch for anyone considering to delve into the curiosity and go into linguistics. Definitely give it a shot.
Well, that's really nice to hear. And I would just say as well, my experience of working with my colleagues across our school, but actually wider in the university as well, is that that's a really strong feature. We academic colleagues are very keen to help students to do the best work that they can do. And this is partly, as we were saying right at the beginning, we have a really good balance between being a city and a university that's part of the city, but also being kind of on a scale which means that the members of staff are going to kind of know the students and be able to support you. So I'm glad that's worked out for you too. That's great. Right.
Well, sorry,
Okay.
sorry to interrupt. There is just one or two questions coming in actually now about reading lists. And is there any kind of recommendations of reading lists for specific subjects or topics?
Yes, so this varies across degrees. I know that, for instance, my colleagues in English literature send out to offer holders, and it might be we're at just where we are now in the academic year is a really busy time. Laura and Kailani are working on their dissertations, which get to be submitted in really quite shortly, just a couple of weeks. And that's the same for many academic colleagues and current students. But I know that for certain degree programs in the near future, so into sort of late spring, early summer, the program coordinators will be sending out suggested sort of recommended reading that students might want to look at before they begin. We don't have compulsory reading lists, so you're not expected to have gone off and bought a huge textbook and kind of worked through it all yourself before you even arrive. But it's very understandable, particularly for degrees like things like English literature that maybe involve reading quite a few texts, which, you know, are literary texts that people enjoy reading anyway, that sometimes students like to have the benefit of a bit more time to feel that they can prepare themselves a little bit like that. So it's quite discipline specific, so degree program specific. If you have an offer for a particular degree program and you want to follow this up and find out if whether you're going to get some suggested reading, you could get in touch with me. But I think you're quite likely to be on the receiving end of some nice friendly emails as we just get slightly into the early summer period.
That's great. Thanks, Will. And there's been another couple of questions that have sneaked in right at the end. So I'm just going to ask you maybe one for the students, if that's okay. So one of the questions is, what's the difference between private accommodation and university accommodation within the city? I wondered if one of the students would like to take that.
Laura, do you want to take this one, or would you like me to?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. So within my first year, I was offered university accommodation up in Hillhead. So there's a bunch of different accommodation styles that you can go for. I went into the Adam Smith House, which had your private room shared kind of like bathroom shower spaces, but you also got like a food card or like a weekly limit for food that you could get at the Hillhead like restaurant and cafe. You can also use that on the university campuses as well. That's applicable for some restaurants there. But for personal like private living, there's a bunch of different companies that you can look into based on their location and what kind of services they provide for you. Mine is quite close to the university campus, and so that was something that I looked into, because Hillhead is kind of, it's in the name, it's kind of on a hill, and it's a little kind of like tucked away next to Seton Park. So if you have a preference for like accessibility walking for the university, definitely check out private accommodation. But I do believe that in your first year, sticking with university is definitely very a good way to meet new people, kind of get your foot in the door, that kind of way. So I would definitely suggest private or look into it for your later years, but I think the university one is quite nice anyways.
Thank you. That's great. There's one more as well, maybe more suited for Will, if that's okay, Will. Okay. Is there film and photography equipment available on site?
Yes. So I know that the school invested quite recently in some more up-to-date equipment to support students who are on, for instance, film and visual culture degrees. So the answer is yes. I think there are we have such a range of students. So we've got undergraduate students, and we also have some postgraduate students who are obviously at a later stage in their sort of university career. So I don't know off the top of my head quite the procedures for whether these are available for students to borrow or to sort of sign out, or whether, particularly as an undergraduate, perhaps it's more contained within a course that you're taking. But essentially, yes. that is part of the facilities that we have. There were also some investment in some new sort of computer workstations with appropriate sort of editing software and so on as well. Partly that fits into the wider context of what we have in the school, because we also have a group within school which is called the Elphinstone Institute, which is an institute of folklore and ethnology. And some of the work they do involves basically documenting culture, so music and folk tales and oral history and so on. So there's an aspect of actual sort of ongoing research work that connects in with the use of that sort of equipment as well. So my understanding is sort of yes, but if you want to find out more, then you could follow this up, and we'll get you some more specific information.
That's great, thank you. There's a little bit more coming through about accommodation, but I think the accommodation team might be able to answer a little bit more about that. It's quite specific, so we'll park that one just now. But for now, I think we're done with the questions. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so that's us finishing off. Will, do you want to just thank everyone? And yes, I'll leave you to kind of sign
off. Of course.
Thanks.
Great. So first of all, thank you everybody for coming along. I hope this little presentation gave you some relevant information, and we have recorded it as well. So if there's anything that you want to go back and look at, you'll be able to do that. Also, of course, special thanks to Laura and Kailani for giving up some of their precious time as they continue to work on their dissertations and final assessments. But it was really helpful to hear your perspectives on having been students here. And of course, thanks to Amy for organising it and keeping us all right from a technical point of view as well. So thank you very much, everybody, and I hope we'll be welcoming many of you at the start of the next academic year.